Hi, I'm Jen.
And I'm Carrie.
And we're the Recovery Gals.
We are two gals on a mission to shine the light of truth on those who might be struggling with addiction.
And offer the hope that recovery can give you. Welcome. We recently sat down with Adam Foster from Sober Dad. And I have to say that he has probably one of the best stories from transformation to glory. It is probably one of the coolest and most impactful things.
I know it was definitely the kind of story that you wanted to tell when you had a vision for this podcast.
For sure. So without further ado, here's Adam.
Today we have on Adam Foster. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, everybody.
We're so glad you could join us. It's absolutely amazing. And we are so impressed with Adam and his story and just what God is doing through him. So Adam is the man behind Sober Dad, which is a page on Facebook that has around 311,000 followers. I mean, just a couple. And he's also the co-founder of Frontline Recovery. And that is a 9-month faith-based recovery program that is completely free. Amazing. And you are based out of Charleston, West Virginia. So welcome to the show, Adam. We're so glad you could join us again. And let's see if we get started. What do you think?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, you're awesome.
Excited to hear your story.
All right. First question. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Where did your story begin?
So, my story goes back to like my earliest childhood memories. I grew up in the heart of West Virginia. We help. We're like one of the top 3 states that lead the opioid epidemic, and drug culture and addiction and criminal activity was kind of normal everyday life for me. My earliest childhood memories, I remember my parents selling pain pills, prescription pain pills. I remember like cousins and friends of the family coming over and buying pills off my parents. Actually, pain pills was the first drug that I ever tried at age 11. And so also experienced some trauma as a child. I was molested by an older male family member around 7 and 8. And it happened 3 times, and that kind of stemmed my drug use. Actually, before the pain pills, if I track down the root of when my addiction actually started, it actually started with Benadryl. At 8 and 9 years old, I was taking 6 to 10 Benadryl every night just to go to sleep because I'd have night terrors and I couldn't sleep. And I formed an addiction to them. I had to have that down to come down and be able to sleep. So that's kind of how it started.
Oh, yeah. And then you get introduced, or it seems like pills were just kind of a regular everyday thing. You get introduced to that, and all of a sudden it's like, well, I can get this done a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Right?
So my mom struggled with addiction as well. She was prescribed pain pills, and as the big pharmaceutical companies, as they started realizing the marketing behind these, she slowly got upped in dosage and went from a small scale Lortab over about 8 years to like getting some of the heaviest potent narcotics prescribed to her. At age 11, I tried pain pills for the first time. I didn't really care much for them, but I started drinking and smoking weed directly after that. And I kind of stayed in that phase for a few years. kind of come from a dysfunctional home. My dad was abusive to my mom and to me and my siblings. And it was a real tough kind of childhood. My mom and dad separated at whenever I was 11, and we moved in with my mom's parents. And so up until that point, I was just basically, what's the word for it? I was not involved, but I was around drug culture and pain pill dealing and alcoholism. And then whenever I moved in with my mom's side of the family, all of my uncles were on the harder drugs, using intravenously, using needles, smoking methamphetamine. So it was kind of like jumping from one culture of alcoholism into just full blown addiction. And I was raised in that drug culture. I had started selling weed and smoking weed around age 14 and drinking heavily. And then around 15, my mom, she kind of fell off really hard into addiction. As her prescription pain pills increased with dosage, she started getting worse and worse off. And it was a huge blow for her whenever my mom and dad separated, because they were together for like 20 some years. And she just, I don't know, she was never the same again after they separated. And so I spent a lot of time with my uncles, and my mom was allowing me to smoke weed and drink. And she was one of those parents that said, well, I'd rather you
do it with you or do it with her around.
Yep.
I got it all there a second.
That's okay.
She was one of those parents that said she would rather me be doing it around her where she could watch me rather than being out where she doesn't know what's going on or if I'm alive and stuff. So we were kind of enabled each other, I used to gripe at her and complain about her drug use for a long time. And then whenever she's kind of started letting me dabble, we became each other's biggest enablers,
Sure.
Were
you the only, I'm sorry. Were you the only child?
No, I have an older brother and an older sister.
Okay.
And they stayed with my dad whenever we moved out.
Okay.
And then, so we bounced around a lot, moved around a lot. It was hard, especially whenever both of our addictions went full blown for us to make ends meet and keep bills paid and prioritize. And so we bounced around a lot. A lot of times we'd get our own place and then have to move back in with my grandparents several months later. And let's see, around age 15 or 16, I found out why my mom and dad, what stemmed their fights all the time, and why I felt like I was mistreated the most out of my siblings. And I found out that my mom had an affair with my dad and got pregnant with me, and I wasn't his biological son. And then, so then I found out that I had two younger siblings, half siblings.
Okay.
My biological father and my half siblings, they didn't really want anything to do with me, because at this point I'm 15 years old, but I'm full blown criminal addict, like doing crazy stuff that kids should never be doing. I dropped out of school at age 16 to sell drugs full time, and it was crazy. Let's see.
When you were 16, I'm curious. When you were 16 and you had dropped out of school and you were selling drugs, was it on your radar at all? Like, this isn't really something I want to do, or was it more like, this is survival and this is what I have to do to stay alive?
Well, it was partially two things. Like, I knew, I come from rural West Virginia, where it's everybody was doing it. Everybody was selling their prescriptions. Everybody was on welfare and manipulating the state for like, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
food stamps and then I was surrounded, all of my friends and all of my relatives were in the drug culture. So it was like normal life to me. And at this point, like I'm still in a bit of a honeymoon stage, as we call it in recovery. Like it was still fun for me. It was still exciting and crazy and living on the edge. And then I started to, let's see, I had limitations on my life. Like I never set any higher standards because this is all I knew. This is all that everybody around me that, you know what I'm saying? Then my mom started using intravenously and things started to get pretty bad. And then the Oxycontins hit the streets. I don't know if y'all remember the Oxycontin phase or not, but like that tore the communities apart in West Virginia. And then I ended up getting addicted to those and going through withdrawals off those is what led me to use intravenously for the first time, which is like shooting up with a needle. And then it was just all bad from there. Like that's when the honeymoon phase stopped and it wasn't fun no more, but I couldn't quit. And then I started I couldn't sell enough to manage my habit. So then I started committing crimes to help feed my habit as well. I caught my first charges whenever I was 17. I didn't get charged because I was a minor, but like it was some heavy duty charge. If I'd have been 18, I'd have been away for multiple years. And then at age 18, I caught more charges. And then this time I did go away and I went to prison for the first time for 19 months. And crazy enough, I went to prison, and the prison that I went to was Welch, West Virginia. And that was like the drug overdose capital in that time of like the United States. And that's where I got hooked on Opanas for the first time. It was inside.
What? Oh,
I'm not familiar with those. Yeah.
So like Opanas, okay, after the Oxycontins hit and they realized how crazy addictive and powerful they were, they took those off the market, but then they brought in a lower grade, which Opana was Oxycontin and morphine mixed together. Then so that's where I did those for the first time. And then did 19 months. I come out, I was already strung out and still addicted when I made parole. So I didn't make it out very long. I ended up overdosing and going back, getting put back in jail and on my way back to prison. And then in this time that I did, let me see. I went back and forth various times for parole violations and stuff, and I was on the run. And then I went back to prison again around 2013 and 2014. I can't remember exactly, but I was there. I was in there for 3.5 years that time. And in that time, my mom went to prison for distribution of prescription pain pills. She got out on parole. And then I got out on parole, and we were out on parole together. And she ended up having a heart attack in the parole office waiting room. I had escaped custody because I had failed a drug screen, and the parole officer had picked me up and was taking me to pick up my home confinement box. And I jumped out in handcuffs and I ran and I escaped custody. And then 30 days later, I got arrested. I got picked up 4 days later after that. But then 30 days after that, my mom had a heart attack in the parole waiting room. And they wouldn't call an ambulance for her because they thought that she was pretending to be sick, which is the excuse that I used to have him let me out of the car to run.
Mm-hmm.
And she ended up passing away.
Mm.
And then, so I'm away for like another 18 months or so. And in that time, my dad goes to prison for distribution of prescription painkillers. And then he gets out and is on parole and finishes parole before I even get back out.
Mm.
And then, so like between the ages of 19 to 28, I'm in like this crazy vicious cycle of just long stints of incarceration, getting out for 2 or 3 months, going back for 9 months, getting out for 2 or 3 months, going back for 18 months, back and forth, back and forth. And, you know, I like I mentioned earlier, I had formed this mentality in my mind that, you know, I'm built for this. This is my life's expectancy.
Mm-hmm.
This was like, it was like in the culture, the drug culture and the criminal culture, it was like a rite of pass into manhood or something, you know. And I was ego driven and I had a chip on my shoulder and very prideful, but it was false pride. But eventually, after the later half of that, I started getting tired of going to prison. I started getting tired of getting locked up, and you know, I had developed major social anxiety, even amongst friends and like family. Whenever I'd come home from prison, I didn't feel right, and multiple times I would catch charges and be relieved whenever I was going back to prison because I had come to refer that to as home. Like, I'm going back home, man. Finally, I'm going back home.
Well, it was
And,
what you were used to. It was a safe place for you.
And
And it was very predictable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the most recent times that I had went back, you know, I avoided like the politics and the gang affiliation and all the crazy stuff that goes on in prison. And I had truly tried to set myself up for success once I was released this time. Like, I took all the classes they offered. I got certified in electrician. And, you know, I thought that I had done all the things to prepare me for success. And I hadn't made it like 4 weeks and I had relapsed and I was back to the same old me. And so at this point, I go back for a 60-day shocker, and then I get out for like 2 or 3 weeks and I relapse, and I go back for another shocker, and then I get back out again. And I was just so defeated at this point, man, because like I had tried to give what I thought was a valiant effort in trying to stay sober and stay clean.
Yeah.
And I was just so defeated, and I thought that it was impossible. Like, it's not possible. And, you know, I found myself high on meth, sitting on a creek bank with a loaded pistol in one hand and a loaded syringe in the other. And I'm just like, I have this like crazy spiritual, mental, and emotional breakdown, contemplating suicide. While I was incarcerated, I lost a little cousin to suicide because he couldn't beat his meth addiction. All in this stint of time, in the stints of the prison time, my addiction went from primarily opioids to methamphetamine because I learned how to manufacture methamphetamine in prison.
Right.
And then, so once I got out, I just started doing that, and I never really bothered the opiates again. And so I lost my uncle to suicide because of methamphetamine addiction. Couldn't beat it. Never heard of, you know, I lost my mom indirectly. She had a heart attack, but it was stemmed from drug use while she had heart trouble.
Right.
And all of my friends and family are either locked up or strung out. And I was just so hopeless, man. And I remember in 2016, I was out for a short amount of time. I was out for like 9 months, and I was on the run, and I had charges in 4 different counties. And I had showed up to my sister's and my brother's house on Christmas Eve night when my whole family's there eating Christmas dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got dropped off. I had nowhere to go. I was crashing in abandoned houses and sleeping in stolen vehicles. And I had showed up. It's 5 inches of snow. I showed up on foot, and they met me at the front door and was like, "What are you doing here? You're not allowed here. You have given up your right to be a part of this family because you won't go seek help." And so I ended up leaving on foot. My dad comes and picks me up and takes me to the next town over because my sister's afraid that I'm going to retaliate and break into her house when they're gone because she wouldn't let me in. And, you know, she wasn't wrong because I had done some really bad stuff. I'd broken into my sister's and my dad's and my brother's multiple times. And so that night, you know, people say that they ate out of dumpsters. I never ate out of a dumpster because on methamphetamine, you just don't eat. But I was over in Oak Hill, West Virginia, and I was walking behind the Burger King to climb inside the dumpster to get out of the cold.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the lowest. That was the lowest. And that led up. After that, I ended up stealing a vehicle, a Jeep Cherokee, that night, and I slept in it for 2 nights and got arrested Christmas night or the night after Christmas, and went back to jail and back to prison. And well, fast forward. I'm sorry, I'm back and forth a little
You're
bit.
okay. You're okay. It's your story.
I'm tracking.
So the most recent time that I had gotten, so that was like one of my first rock bottoms right there. So that preluded, okay, I'm such a scumbag that my family won't even allow me over on Christmas. That's whenever I tried to do what I was supposed to do while incarcerated and prepare myself for success. And then I get out, fall to the same behaviors.
Yep.
At this point, so now I'm back on the creek bank. I hadn't been allowed to my brothers or my sisters for like 3 years. And I'm just sitting there and I'm just like spiritual, mental, physical, just bankrupt and contemplating suicide. And I just sat there for like 4 hours and bawled my eyes out. And finally, I couldn't bring myself to commit suicide. And I reached out to my sister. I called my brother and sister, and they had been trying to talk me in several years of going to treatment, going to rehab. And so I called my sister, and she could tell. She said that, you know, she could really tell. She could hear the total surrender in my voice. And I was like, please just come get me, come save me. I don't care where you send me. I don't care where you take me. But if you get me in rehab, I'll go right now. And I swear. And so they came and they got me, and my sister, she stayed on the phone for like 18 hours through the night, calling so many places.
Yes.
Wow.
And she finally got me into a program in Huntington, West Virginia called Lifehouse.
Okay.
And which was weird because out of West Virginia, Huntington at this time in 2018, Huntington was like little Chicago. Mm-hmm. Like it was the worst city to be in.
Really?
There was an estimated in 2016, there was like an overdose every 8 minutes in Huntington.
Wow.
Like it was bad. And I was like, everybody's like, you're going there to get clean. I was like, I don't know. That's where the rehab's at. That's where I'm going.
Right.
So,
I'm going.
Yes.
I'm broken. I got nothing else. I'm going.
So it was a faith-based program. I did 60 days inpatient where they keep you completely cut off from the outside world. Yep. The only thing you do is go to meetings, fellowship with the people in the program, and go to church and do Bible studies and stuff like that. And pardon me. So after the 60 days, you transition to a sober living portion of the program. Mm-hmm. I'm on parole at this time. And my parole officer, I remember when my sister found me the bed, I had called my parole officer and I was like, Aaron, please, like I found rehab. Please, please, please let me go to rehab. Please, I'm dirty. I can't stay clean. And the crazy thing is she was about to call me that same day and tell me, listen, you either got to find a program to get into or I'm violating you and sending you back to prison because I'm tired of dealing with you. And so whenever I called her, I didn't know this, but I'm like begging to go to rehab, but she was already getting ready to send me to rehab. And,
that's not a coincidence.
So she was skeptical, she said, because me transferring to another county, I was going to become a problem parolee for another officer. I would have had to switch caseloads and stuff. And she didn't want to do that to another officer. And I had to beg her and beg her. And so anyways, I did the inpatient part and then I got out into sober living. I got a job working at a mattress factory doing labor.
Yeah.
And for the first 6 months of like living halfway life, on life's terms, like I was walking to work, I was eating at the city mission every morning and every day for lunch. Just grateful and happy.
For me to hear your personal story about being in the thick of it, like it gives me chills just hearing all that you're saying and kind of that functional, like the function of the dysfunction, you know, wanting to go to prison and feeling like that's at home. And, you know, I heard you say like the parole officer was thinking about, you know, violating you so that you go back. And it seems like such a broken system. And so just to know, to know the end of the story already is just amazing to me. And I just find it, I don't know, I just find it so intriguing. So I enjoyed listening to all aspects of the story. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. So you were 6 months. So I've been in 30-day treatment facilities before. And, of course I've run into, and I've met people in the same situation as you, you know, they extended an extra 30 days. So they were there for 60. They knew coming out of the treatment program, there was still parole, or the last one I went to was a women's facility. So there was still DHS that they had to face and all these different things. And sober living was really highly encouraged. So you were kind of at the point in your story where you were 6 months out and kind of doing all the things. And
well, I had just been released from so the program that I went to, I did 60 days of inpatient, but that's like that. It was a completely abstinent-based program whenever I was there. And then, so after that, you move to a different phase of the program, which is sober living. And I was in that whole program for 6 months total. So I was in 2 months inpatient, 4 months in sober living.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then, so I'm walking to work, and you know I'm trudging and I'm persevering, and I'm riding the pink cloud, right? Because in this time, in the 60 days, it was a faith-based program too. So let me just talk about the God part for a minute.
Please do.
So I'm like, I was super closed-minded whenever I first got there. I was like, man, this is a cult. These people are crazy. This is not for me. But, you know, they say that we need the Bible says we need a mustard seed of faith. I had a mustard seed of willingness before I had faith.
Right.
Like I was willing to hang out with these crazy people because they were staying clean and sober. Didn't really feel like I related to them or fit in, but I was willing to hang out with them because they wasn't putting a needle in their arm. Right. So, so as I'm going through this part of the program, and this is what I've tried to recreate with Frontline. So, I had no faith, zero faith. I was agnostic, didn't believe in God or anything. And, but, you know, like they're praying before and after every meals, and we have to participate in Bible studies and stuff like that. And then you start seeing like, I don't know how to describe it. You know, those old commercials where that guy's just walking, he's got that dark cloud over top of him.
Yes.
And I was like, you can just see people come in with that. And I felt like I was under that. Yeah. But then you're in rehab, which is basically a homeless shelter, and you're seeing people get released from that, step out of this veil of darkness and just have like this unimaginable peace and joy and serenity and happiness. Yep. And that appealed to me. I was like, man, what are you guys getting that I'm not getting?
Right.
And everybody's telling me that it's the God aspect, that it's Jesus and stuff like that. And so, like, I remember my first few weeks, I started praying, and I was talking to God, and like, you know, my prayers or how I talk to God is nothing special. Mm-hmm. I was just like, man, I'd talk to him like this. I'd be like, man, I don't even know if you're real, but I'm here. I'm talking to you. I want what everybody else is getting. You know, just help me through today. Just help me through today. Mm-hmm. And then we had a Bible study with a little Ebenezer Church of Wayne. And man, these were such loving people that was coming into us. Mm-hmm. And we did this Bible study, and in the book of John, somewhere it talks about Jesus says, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the light. Nobody can come to the Father but through me. And so we broke that scripture down, and basically the way that it was explained to me, the way that I dumbed it down for myself was like, I can't go straight to the plug because he don't know me, but I know Billy, and Billy knows the plug, so Billy can take me to the plug. And that's the same way Jesus is with the Father. I can't go directly to him. I have to go through Jesus. So I started praying. I changed my prayers, and I started talking to Jesus and praying through Jesus. And you're reading the Bible and participating in Bible studies. And I remember struggling with salvation. Mm-hmm. And relating my personal salvation to him dying 2,000 years ago. And I remember just hitting my knees and like crying out and demanding, like, it's crazy because I don't even consider myself a full believer yet, but like I demanded him show it to me in a way that I could grab it, the way that I could understand it and receive it.
Awesome.
And I had an encounter, like a crazy encounter with Christ, and everything changed after that. I just wanted everybody, I don't know, I kind of feel a little bit like a manipulator because it was a lot of people, especially people that's still in active addiction. You're like,
listen, addicts are professional liars and manipulators. I mean, this is what we did for years.
You start talking directly about Jesus, and people will throw a wall up.
Especially
if they're using. So I was kind of like low key manipulating, like promoting recovery, knowing that if they come to recovery, especially a program that I help them get into, they're going to get Jesus.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So like, and this is kind of how Sober Dad was born, and just like my outreach and stuff like that. So I'm working, I'm paying my rent at the sober house, and I'm walking back and forth to work. And then I save up and buy a car, a 95 2-door 5-speed BMW that didn't have a radio. The windows didn't roll down. It didn't have door panels.
There you go. It was perfect though.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's bought and paid for.
You were cruising in style though, my friend. Yeah. BMW, you got the logo.
I started getting weekend passes where I was able to go home for the weekend from my sober living. And I would go, and then so I would go home, and literally I did this 4 or 5 times, and I'd go straight back to the houses that I used to live in. And I was loading up carloads of people and trucking them back to Huntington and getting them in programs.
Oh my gosh.
And like I'm showing up in houses and they've got like pounds of weed laid out on the table with sandwich bagging it up and stuff like that. And I'm just in there telling them how good life is and how great recovery is. And every time I went home, I brought somebody else back with me. And then I realized that I was putting myself too much into vulnerable positions. So I started blogging my recovery on my personal profile. And I started doing, and the very first video that I ever did, man, because I have 4 children total. And my 2 oldest children, I lost rights to while I was incarcerated.
Okay.
And so.
And how old are they now?
They are 11 and 10.
And when you think about them, is it hard to think that when you were their age, where you were and where they are?
I think that they're in a lot better of a place than I was.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, that gives me peace and stuff. But at the same time, like, I struggle with the feelings and emotions, you know, because I had the dad that didn't try to be a part of my life. And that was a huge, I felt abandoned and neglected, and I was angry. And that also helped stem a lot of my drug use. I had deep-rooted resentments against my father, both fathers, because neither one of them really wanted anything to do with me. And, you know, I just pray all the time that my kids don't develop those same resentments. And if they do, that it doesn't push them down the same road that I went. I don't want to be the reason why my kids turn to addiction, you know? But so I was in a amends making process, and I knew I needed to make an amends to my children. And that's the very first video that I ever did. You know, I did like almost an hour-long video of me sitting on a riverside. You know, I told them basically it was, you know, the title of the video was Say No to Drugs. And it was for my kids. And I told them all the reasons, everything why I started using as a child and where it led me and how it impacted my life and how it impacted their lives. And, basically just pled with them that no matter how crappy life gets, don't choose drugs and alcohol.
Right.
And so that video got like thousands and thousands and thousands of views. And like teachers and stuff are telling me that they played it in their health classes and stuff like that. And so at the same time, I realized that going back to the thick of it was putting me in a vulnerable position. So I just started sharing openly on social media, on Facebook, and I was doing these like outreach cries and pleading for people to come to recovery and just blogging my own personal recovery, you know, trials and triumphs. And then all of a sudden, like, people are reaching out to me from all over the United States, relating to my story, seeking treatment, asking for advice and stuff like that. And I reached a friend limit, and then somebody told me that I should start a page, and I didn't even know what it was. I never paid attention enough to know what a influencer was or anything like that. In that time of doing all that, like, I felt like this huge, I needed to make a direct amends to my community. And so I started solely just trying to fish people out of addiction in my own personal community, right? Because I thought with the way statistics was going, that the chances of my children growing up in that community and becoming addicts was every day it got greater and greater of a chance.
Right.
And so any part that I could play in battling addiction in my own personal community, give them a greater chance of a successful and prosperous life without addiction and alcoholism. And I swear, like, that was a huge driving factor in it. You know, I wanted, like, all my lower generations, my little nieces and my nephews and my little cousins, my younger siblings, like, I just wanted as many people out of addiction and that lifestyle as possible. Whenever the teachers and stuff started, you know, messaging me and asking me if they could play that video and tell me that they played the video, and then I was like, man, that's a good idea. And I contacted one of my old high school teachers and asked him if I could come in and talk to his students. And it, like, went so phenomenal. And then, like, by word of mouth, him telling other students, and I got invited to another school, and then I got invited to another school, and I've talked to, like, nearly probably 70,000 students in person, not at one time, just like total.
Yeah, right.
And then so we formed a page called Sober Squad first, because there was, like, me and there was, like, 4 other people that was super into what we were doing, just trying to serve any way we could, trying to fight this epidemic on any level that we could. Prevention, pulling people out, whatever we could do. And then, you know, people in recovery, they talk about the pink cloud. Like, everybody has this celebration period in their beginning of their recovery that, like, they're 10 foot tall and bulletproof and life is so grand, and then real life hits them in the face. You know, I never lost that pink cloud. Like, I remember people bet. Yeah, people used to bet when and how long it would take for me to wear off. And then also caught, so they kind of fell off and didn't care as much and just really just started focusing on themselves and their lives, which is great, you know what I'm saying? And then I branched off and started the Sober Dad page where I could manage it myself. So I started the Sober Dad, and then I continued to go to schools and stuff, and I was great. I was gifted enough with a place of employment that knew how important this stuff was to me. And if a school or something called me, they would let me take off work.
Amazing.
And then COVID hit, and all the schools shut down, and they stopped letting visitors come and stuff like that. So that there for a long time, like, I thought that was going to be like what I was going to do, because I just loved that so much, and I felt like that's what I was going to do forever. But so COVID hit, and I stopped getting into schools, and then I started taking courses to be a peer recovery support and a recovery coach and stuff like that. And I knew that I wanted to work in recovery, and I worked at the factory, and I took these classes. And then eventually, while still pushing the Sober Dad message and posting and just being proactive with that, still working at the factory. I started taking the classes, and then I got a job offer to work at a treatment center, a local treatment center. And, you know, it was really hard to leave the factory, because that was like my support group. Then was like those were like my guys, man.
Right.
And especially my boss. I love my boss so much, man. He gave me a chance when nobody else would. And but I ended up leaving and going to work at a treatment center. And then I worked there for 10 months. And, you know, I really enjoyed it. Working with people from my background is, you know, a passion of mine. And I still feel more at home in a room full of addicts than I do at a family function back home. But they got to be in recovery for me.
Right.
You got to meet me where I'm at from now on.
Exactly. Exactly.
But uh, so I worked there for 10 months, and then slowly and surely, as like, I just wanted to do my own thing. And, I had been talking about it. I had been manifesting it. And like, I knew at some point I was going to start my own. I didn't know if it's going to be a sober living or what, but I talked about it and talked about it. And then like this lady had reached out to me. Actually, this guy had reached out to me, and this is how Frontline was born.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working at this treatment center, and this guy reaches out to me and has me do an interview much like this on his page, but his audience is nowhere. It's not about alcohol or alcoholism or addiction.
So they were normies. They were just normies.
Yeah, it was just bringing a message. And
amazing.
I don't know, it was crazy. But afterwards, his wife reached out to me, and she sells t-shirts and stuff on Spotify, or like not Spotify, but like Etsy and Shopify and stuff like that. And so she reaches out to me, and she's like, I don't know why, but I feel like God's just telling me that I need to help you. And do you sell shirts or have any interest in it? And I'm like, yeah, people from the page beg me for merchandise all the time, but I'm just so like I barely get a live video to work,
right.
Up an online store. And she's like, well, so she's got on Zoom with me for like 4 hours one day and set my whole store up. And I had a couple t-shirt concepts that had been up here, but I'd never done anything with them. And so boom, as soon as my store went active, and I made one video about it on Sober Dad, in like a week and a half, I made almost $3,000 selling t-shirts.
Wow.
And I took half of the money from that and went and bought I could show it to you right now. It's out there in the driveway. It's the first like step of Frontline recovery. But
yes,
I went and bought an old church van, a 15-passenger church van. And I was like, this is it. Like, it's real. Like, this was like, up until now, I'd been procrastinating and stuff. And I was like, this is it. Now it's time to really buckle down and start looking for a building. And I'm gonna bring this to fruition. And I used that van at the center that I worked at to take guys to meetings and church and stuff like that. And then slowly started saving up my money and putting away every extra dime I could get. And then finally found a building. And you wouldn't believe how many places, like I found a bunch of buildings, but as soon as you tell landlords what you want to do there.
No way.
Yeah,
For real?
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, because they don't want us near them, like near the community.
I'm like so many times I was told no. It was like disheartening a lot, but I never gave up. But it's like, oh yeah, they're showing you around. They're like, yeah, man, I'd love to start a men's recovery ministry here, and I think I could house like 14 guys. And they're like, oh no, not here. You're not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But finally, I found an old doctor's office, and the landlord's so cool, man. And I told him exactly what I wanted to do, and he's a little bit skeptical. But he and the crazy thing is he said that later on, he said, he took a leap of faith. He felt a push from God to say yes, right? And so we were in that building for 5.5 months. Well, for about 5 months, and we outgrew it. But he came in to install a second shower for us one day. We had 16 residents at this time, and we had one shower. And he came to install an extra shower. So this whole week, through our programming days and stuff like that, him and his dad was there, and he got to see our day-to-day operations and kind of see the guys in class and in group and in Bible studies and doing their step work and stuff. And then he's like, man, you guys totally changed my perception for the rest of my life, man. He's like, I was skeptical all up until now, but I'm extremely grateful that you guys was able to come in here and do this here. And he fought so hard for us to be able to keep that building. He wanted us to stay there, but it just wasn't practical. We had to move to something bigger. And so now we're in a huge house with 30 beds. We have 28 residents, an indoor pool, massive, like 20-foot high ceilings in the living room. Like, it's ridiculous. But that's one thing that I wanted to do different also, because like through the Sober Dad social media outreach and stuff, like, you know, you'd have plenty of people that would reach out for that would have Medicaid or private insurance, or they had family that was willing to back them financially. Mm-hmm. But there's a huge gap for people who have absolutely nothing.
Right.
And we wanted to stand in the gap of that. We wanted to be able to say, no insurance, no money, no problem. If you can get here, we're going to take you.
Wow.
And God supernaturally blessed it, man. God's a part of it every day. Super spirit fulfilling every day. There's, of course, you have some knuckleheads that just come through and like
the riffraff, right?
Yeah, like the revolving door, but the ones who get it, man, make it worth it. The ones who get it make it worth it.
Because not only are they coming to you to get clean and sober, but they're also getting the gospel.
Yep.
Which is, would you consider God in your story your turning point?
My encounter with Christ was definitely my turning point.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Wow. So do you think a faith-based recovery, in your opinion, is, I don't know, what's the word I want? Is
more successful?
Yes. Thank you.
I do. That's why I wanted to leave the other place, because, you know, you couldn't mandate Bible studies, church attendance.
Right.
And with a medical facility, you can't mandate those things. And also you have to be in support of MAT. A lot of people's going to hate me for this. A lot of people need it. Understand it's a lot of people's pathway to recovery, but abstinence was my pathway. Yeah. And abstinence is a pathway for anybody that comes to Frontline. Like,
and you said it was MAT. MAT. What is that?
That's like medical assisted treatment. Oh, okay. So Suboxone, methadone, Sublocade.
Okay. So I went to this. Okay, I didn't realize there was a term for that, because I went to a place that there was nothing. I mean, you could take your multivitamin and you know, whatever, but the doctor that we had there, and I don't know if I should be sharing this or not, might get edited, but the doctor we had there was this genius, but he had come from another facility, well-known facility, that was very much into, you know, administering lots of medication that can cause addiction to them, you know, to the medication itself. And so that's really cool. And I remember I went to my therapist the first time, and she's like, so what are we doing here? Are we working with your alcohol? Are we going for a complete abstinence? And I was like, I mean, that shouldn't even be a choice, right? Like, nothing that I can get addicted to, please. Let's just get that off the table.
The crazy part about it is, and I don't know if I'm oversharing, but the crazy thing about it is a lot of these places, and this is also why I wanted to do my own thing and kind of do the abstinent thing, is a lot of programs, even ones who used to be abstinent, are allowing MAT right now, because, and there's several driving factors, is that for one, they are able to, for lack of a better word, apply or get grant funding from larger pools of money than what people who don't are. Also, say I've got a full staff on a treatment center, and I've got everybody on Suboxone. Well, all those people need a higher level of care. So rather than my counselor being allowed to visit with the client once a week, now my counselor can visit with them 4 days a week. And generate more revenue.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Which
Money.
is
Why
sad.
is money?
That's
money
so
is the
terribly
driving
sad.
factor.
Yeah, it's sad.
I love that your mission is just about getting people whole. Like, I'm always like, my favorite word is freedom. I text Jen all the time, freedom, like freedom with the Braveheart,
Like William Wallace.
with William Wallace. Yeah, with the free, because it's just, it's so incredibly freeing. And when you're when you haven't quite fully gotten to the surrender point, or there's a good intention, but not maybe quite all the action, you just don't even think it's possible. And it's like, no, it really is. Like, there's this life that can be full of joy and peace and contentment. It sounds like that's kind of what you're sharing at Frontline.
Mhm.
Yeah. That just like, what the good book talks about, that peace that surpasses all understanding. I just want everybody to get a piece of that.
Amen.
I was counted out. I was kicked aside, and I was pushed down, and and I know that there's like hundreds and thousands of us who've been done the same way, and we've just let this thing, but I want to give people the same experiences that I have now too. Like my family, the 3.5 years that I've been gone, I came in March 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I had one relapse October 19th, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
But so in all this time that I've been away, I've had reservations to move back and go back home, and felt like that's where I was supposed to play my part at, but God just kept opening up doors down here. But even being 3 hours away, so like the holiday 2016, whenever I was turned away for Christmas,
Right.
like now my family schedules family events around when I can come home. Like whenever I was in treatment, still in sober living and stuff like that, they celebrate Christmas on the 28th because I couldn't be there the 25th. And like, I just want other people's to be able to have that and experience that too. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So, obviously your family is very pleased with your recovery. Your sister, can you tell us a little bit about how they feel about your recovery?
My sister, she's tough. She is so tough.
I love it.
She's so supportive now. Like before, she's very cut and dry, and she don't care to tell anybody exactly what she thinks. And like the first 2 years of my recovery, I was fighting for custody of my 6-year-old son. And finally, after 2.5 years, I was awarded 3 weekends out of the month with him.
Yes.
And so she came to testify at court, and the judge asked her the same thing. He's like, okay, what's different about him now? Why should he have his child now? And she's like, she told the judge this. She said, Your Honor, before he come to recovery, before he got clean, he was a scumbag and didn't deserve the air that he was breathing. He'd rob you, steal you blind. And I tell him all the time that I didn't even want him around in my face at all. He wasn't allowed around my kids. He wasn't allowed at my house. He wasn't allowed. But now, like my kids go and stay with him on weekends. My kids go visit him. I trust him to take my kids on vacation. I trust him. Like whenever this is her words, whenever I'm experiencing a problem or a barrier in my life, I call my little brother for advice now. And it was just like, so, and she's actually coming down tonight to spend the weekend with me.
I love that so much.
I love it.
Isn't it funny how God can redeem the like hardest situations and turn it to good? And look at your life. That is exactly, you're living proof of God and the Bible and redemption and everything that he talks about. And I feel
Also,
like stories like yours move the heart of God.
another promise that's in was that if you come to Christ and you live underneath of his protection, that not just you, but your whole household will be under his protection and underneath his restoration. And I would like to share this testimony also. The two uncles that I started using hardcore drugs with whenever my mom and my dad separated and I moved in with my grandparents, the very two uncles that introduced me to the intravenous drugs and the methamphetamine. One of my uncles, I had visited home and I picked him up hitchhiking, and then like 6 months later, I heard from him and he went to treatment that night. He's got over 18 months clean and sober. And my other uncle, like he's coming over this weekend also. We're all going paintballing.
I love it.
And then my other uncle is in my program right now.
Oh, like, my goodness.
And yeah, so like, and we've been praying hard for him for like 3.5 years, and he is so closed-minded. It's crazy because I've had to, like, the first few days he is here, he would mock God and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then, but now, like, he's crying during praise and worship. During group time, he's in his Bible and he's taking notes. And it's like, it's so powerful to see God working on him. And I'm like,
it's crazy because it's like they've been to that. Well, I always liken it to like hell is wherever you're away from God, and to see somebody that you love so much get to that place of where they can recognize, I was so far away from the one true life source, and to watch them in worship and be so moved,
to watch the scales fall from their eyes and then be able to see the light. That's probably one of the most fulfilling things for you. I can't imagine. I mean, just being in that environment all the time and just seeing lives transforming before your eyes. Like, there is no greater testament.
There isn't. I tell these guys all the time that Jesus says, even greater works than he will we do. And I tell these guys that even greater works that I do, you guys are going to be able to go out and outdo.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
so in your opinion, and I say it this humble opinion, tell me, how many lives do you think that you have impacted? Seriously.
I don't know. A couple, like, I don't know.
I don't know that he can do that.
I know.
I think that's
the thing is that we will never know the eternal impact that we have. And you are blazing the trail for so many others, and you saying yes and making that change.
And there's been so many trials and tribulation, like in recovery and in the recovery community there for a long time. I got kind of shunned and mocked and made fun of because of what I was doing on social media, because by our traditions of a 12-stepper, you're supposed to lead by attraction rather than promotion.
Exactly.
But something that I felt like addiction's always evolving, and recovery has to evolve too, and like it's several times it's been brought up, and it's a big stink that I would do these things and stuff like that. But like even the people that I got sober with, even the people that I started this journey with. But and then you always have the naysayers and stuff. But I remember one time, like, somebody from my hometown, somebody that I didn't get along with, we fought all the time. Like, if we seen each other on the streets, we always had beef and we just despised each other. And I remember one time I had gotten a message late at night one time, and he's like, listen, man, He's like, I don't even know if you'll read this or if you'll ever respond. He said, I know we didn't get along. We didn't particularly like each other. He said, man, but I watched you for about a year and I thought you was so full of crap, dude. And I hated everything that you was doing. He said, and then one night you did a video. I can't remember which one it was, but it hit home for me. And I want you to know that I went to treatment the following day. And I just wanted to tell you that I'm 6 months clean and sober.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like, it's happened like this many times. And so like,
so worth it. Don't listen to what they say.
Yeah, worth it. Yeah, worth it.
Because we think about Jesus and it's like, he was so more about not the tradition, but about the heart, you know, and it's like we can almost worship the tradition more than we can love the person. And it's loving the person enough to say,
That's really good. That's so good what you just said.
But it's like, I'm going to meet you where, because where are the people hanging out? I mean, this is where Jesus is going to hang out. The people are hanging out.
Yes.
And it's like, let's tell them. Somebody needs to tell them that there's hope and there's life and they don't have to live like this anymore. And they don't have to be burdened by it. And it's like, it's what starts out as somewhat fun. And you had alluded to this, like what starts out as something that for me, it was almost like a self-medicating too. It's like, oh, well, now I can go and have fun and I'm not so worried about what everybody's thinking. All of a sudden you turn around and it's this prison that you can't get out of. And you keep, for me, this is actually how I describe it. It's like this, I would keep going back to this prison because I at least knew how I was going to feel, even though it wasn't going to feel great. It was predictable. And I don't know, I guess I just kind of was relating to that. My experience to your story of like physically returning to prison. But I mean, isn't that kind of the truth of addiction? It's like you keep going back and you don't know why. But
I felt like, I don't know, a term that I've used a lot was being held hostage by your addiction. Like, so no, I didn't want to spend the kids' diaper money. No, I didn't want to break in and rob my brother's house, but you know what I'm saying? Like I was being held hostage by my addiction.
Right.
And people don't understand that we're not totally empty and void and so jaded and heartless that we do these things and we do these heinous acts and not feel from them. So like, yeah, I'm terribly sick and I'm so physically dependent on this substance that I'm going to go rob my brother so that I can get well. And then when tomorrow comes, now I'm sick and I'm beating myself up mentally because I'm such a scumbag that I just robbed my brother to get my fix. And now I got to run and numb from that as well. And it's like,
that's key.
It's a vicious circle.
Yeah.
A cycle you can't get out of.
Yep. Yeah. I can't agree with you more. It's exactly how I feel when it's like, now I have to drink my way out of the shame and the guilt because that gets heaped on. And it's like, I give it way too much power. I mean, this is the big thing. It's like, I'm not going to give my power away anymore to something that promises me something and completely kicks me in the behind the next morning. Because like you have this authority and this power and you walk with it when you walk with Jesus and you have it and you can claim it and it's yours and you have so much more power than any lie and any, addiction, evil, right? And so it's just like, I don't want to give my power away. I have Jesus' power and he has already overcome all of that. Sorry, that was a little rant.
I love it. I love it. So Adam, can you tell our viewers how to get a hold of you, and how we could help you here in landlocked Iowa?
So for anybody who is struggling with substance abuse or you or a loved one, are struggling with substance abuse or alcoholism, if you just want advice or you're seeking treatment for yourself or a loved one, whether you have insurance, no insurance, Medicaid, private insurance, you can always message the Sober Dad page directly.
Okay.
I have several people that help me admin that page and respond to messages like that.
Yep.
Anybody who wishes to help or sow into the Frontline ministry, and we're totally free. We don't charge these guys a thing, but we still have expenses like power,
Right.
water, rent, food, stuff like that. Anybody who wishes to care to give or sow or send us Bibles or write the guys inspirational letters or anything,
Love it.
You can reach out to the Frontline Recovery page directly.
Okay. Last question.
If you were to offer people that are considering recovery and currently in recovery and maybe just struggling through it, what is like a thought or a phrase of hope that you would want to share with them? The whole story kind of speaks it. I didn't need to interject that because I'm like, it's not like, I guess if you could summarize maybe even your whole story, it's like, what would you say to somebody that's like, I'm too broken to be fixed?
Or maybe people in denial, or people, everybody across the board.
Just being humble and being open-minded and being teachable was a huge part. And then something that always resonates with me is show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Ooh, I love that.
So good.
Yeah. You hang around people that's using and drinking, and you're going to use and drink. If you hang around people who are building businesses, buying houses, and staying clean and sober, you're going to do those things too.
Yeah. Powerful. I love it.
I do too.
Thank you so much for joining our podcast today. If you found this encouraging, please like, share, and subscribe. For more information on who we are and what we're about, please visit recoverygalspodcast.com.